You think you can tell. That's the part that makes this whole thing work. Sarah is 31. She works in data analytics for a logistics company in Austin. Her entire job is pattern recognition, spotting anomalies, questioning data integrity, identifying when a number is lying. She reads the methodology footnotes before she trusts a study. She's the person in her friend group who sends the fact check, not the rumor. She is exactly the kind of person who cannot be fooled by bad information. In November 2025, Sarah saw a video. An elderly woman, soft voice, gray hair, eyes that held that specific weight people get after something real has happened to them. The woman described losing her home in a flood, photo albums she couldn't reach in time, the bedroom where she raised 3 kids. She cried at exactly the right moment. It was about 2.5 minutes long. Sarah cried too. She sent it to her mother with a short message. "This broke me." She posted it in 2 group chats. She argued with her cousin for 3 days after he called it fake. She defended that woman with the energy you spend on something you know to be true. The woman didn't exist. The flood didn't exist. The channel that made the video operated 930 other channels just like it, across 12 platforms in 4 languages. That month, the operation cleared over $20,000. Clean. Sarah wasn't fooled because she's gullible. Sarah was fooled because she's human. And this system was not built for humans. It was built to capture them. But that's not even the most interesting part of her story. The most interesting part is Brandon. Brandon is 38. He works in cybersecurity in Seattle. After 3 years of watching colleagues fall for fabricated outrage, synthetic reviews, and AI-generated news reports about wars that weren't being fought, he made a deliberate decision: maximum skepticism. He disengages from anything he can't trace to a verifiable primary source. He considers himself inoculated. In February 2026, Brandon scrolled past a headline about a common blood pressure medication, one his father had been taking for 4 years, flagged in a legitimate FDA recall notice. He assumed it was fabricated health panic, designed to drive clicks. He kept scrolling. His father took that medication for 2 more months. 2 people, opposite responses, both lost something. That's not a coincidence. That's architecture. So here's what you already know, and it's accurate. There is a lot of bad AI content online. Videos with slightly robotic voices, images that look almost real, but something about the hands or the teeth or the way light falls on skin is wrong in a way you feel before you can name it. Articles that use every correct word in an incorrect order. Blogs that answer every question and somehow leave you knowing less than when you arrived. You've noticed it. You've complained about it. You've sent it to a friend with 3 question marks. But that's the surface. And this isn't a story about the surface. Below it are more layers. The first layer is the one platforms will actually discuss in earnings calls because it sounds like a feature. Recommendation algorithms, YouTube, TikTok, Meta, all of them, do not evaluate quality. There is no quality metric. What they measure is engagement, watch time, click rate, return visits, shares. And the single most consistent predictor of strong engagement signals isn't craft, isn't research, isn't truth, it's volume. One skilled human creator makes 1 carefully constructed video per week. One AI content farm runs 930 channels simultaneously, each posting daily, each triggering the algorithm's active account ranking system, each one generating another auction for your attention. The algorithm doesn't ask who made it or why. It asks, was the button pushed again? More content means more ad slots. More ad slots means more revenue. The incentive is not quality. It has never been quality. The incentive is surface area, as much of your screen, for as many seconds as the system can arrange. That's the layer everyone can see. The one beneath it is harder to look at. B.F. Skinner identified something in the 1950s that became the invisible blueprint for every addictive system built since. He called it the variable ratio schedule. Fixed rewards create habits. Variable rewards create compulsion. If every 10th scroll gave you exactly 1 interesting piece of content, you'd scroll 10 times and stop. But when it appears at random, sometimes on the 3rd scroll, sometimes the 40th, sometimes not at all, you can't stop. Because stopping means maybe the good one was next. AI Slop is the perfect fuel for this. The content doesn't need to be good. It needs to be surprising. Strange. It needs to reach your amygdala before your rational mind has finished forming a question. That's why Shrimp Jesus worked. An AI-generated image of a crustacean fused with a religious icon flooded Facebook in 2025. Millions of engagements. Not because anyone found it meaningful, because no human brain had seen that combination before. The surprise triggered a dopamine response before the question, "Wait, what is this?" could fully form. Your brain is being calibrated to this. Slowly, the threshold for novelty rises. The tolerance for slow, complex content drops. You're not becoming less intelligent. You're becoming adapted to a stimulus environment with no evolutionary precedent, and your ancient reward system has no defense protocol for it. The loop runs, the scroll continues. Now the layer that almost no one frames correctly. The one that changes the scale of everything else. By 2026, more than 51% of global web traffic is bot-generated. Sit with that. For the first time in the history of the internet, humans are the statistical minority on the network that humans built. You're outnumbered on your own platform. 74.2% of newly published English-language URLs now contain at least partial AI-generated content. An investigation found that roughly 40% of videos recommended to children through YouTube Kids were classified as AI slop, visuals with no narrative logic, no educational structure, no human author. Optimized purely to hold a child's visual attention long enough to complete an ad impression. The web you learn to navigate, the one built on forums, arguments, human weirdness, real errors, real jokes with context, that web is being drowned. Not slowly, at industrial speed. One Reddit user described it this way: "Every person I argue with in comments feels like an LLM designed to keep me on the app." That used to sound like paranoia. By the numbers, it's becoming probability. But we still haven't reached the layer nobody talks about. And this one changes what your role in this actually is. Think about what happens when an AI model gets trained. It produces outputs. Those outputs go onto the internet. They get indexed. They get scraped. And because the internet's training data is now overwhelmingly synthetic, the next generation of models gets trained on the previous generation's output, the machine eating itself. But here's where most people stop the thought too early. They think, okay, so AI content gets worse over time. Formulaic, hollow. That's already bad. What they miss is what's happening on your side of the screen. Every time you watch a piece of slop, every pause, every click, every 3-second view, every comment you leave correcting something that was never trying to be accurate. That data gets collected, not just to sell you something, to teach the next version of the system how to hold someone exactly like you for 3 more seconds than the last version managed. You're not being observed as a consumer. You're being observed as a behavioral specimen. Your reactions, your hesitations, your tells, the exact moment you're about to scroll away and what stopped you. That's the training data the next generation of capture systems runs on. You are not the audience. You are the curriculum. And the system is getting an A. So how do you know when it's happening? Because it doesn't always arrive looking like Shrimp Jesus. Most of it looks completely plausible. There are patterns. And they're learnable. The emotional trigger lands before the context does. Real storytelling earns its emotional moments. Builds situation, stakes, reason, then asks for your feeling. Synthetic content goes straight to the gut. Grief before you know why. Outrage before you have the picture. Wonder before you've been given a reason to wonder. If you're feeling something before you know anything, that timing is the tell. The story is too clean. Human experience is messy. Tangents that go nowhere. Contradictions that don't resolve. Details that don't serve the point. Synthetic content is optimized. Every sentence earns its place. Every beat lands on schedule. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is accidental. Real life wastes things constantly. Suspiciously coherent stories deserve suspicion. And then there's what you might call the residue test. After you've consumed something, try to name one specific thing you learned. Not how it made you feel. Not the impression it left. The actual information. Feeling without residue, a mood but no fact, means you were holding an empty package. None of this means doing what Brandon did. Maximum suspicion is the other way to lose. Brandon built a wall so high that real information couldn't clear it. He didn't win. He just lost differently. The goal isn't to stop trusting everything. The goal is to understand what the trap actually feels like from inside. Because from outside, it's obvious. From inside, it just feels like using the internet. Here's what actually changed things for people who figured this out. not discipline, not willpower, not deleting apps. The first thing is friction, tiny, intentional friction. The dopamine loop runs on zero resistance. You open the app, the feed loads, the scroll begins before you decided to scroll. The loop is already running before you're conscious of it. Inserting even a small pause, enough to form the question, what am I actually looking for right now, is enough to interrupt the automatic sequence. Not because the pause is powerful, because the loop depends on there being no pause at all. The second thing is visiting instead of waiting. An algorithm-curated feed is optimized for the emotional state you're in when it catches you. It knows when you're bored. It knows when you're anxious. It surfaces content calibrated to that state, not to your actual goals. A deliberately built list of sources, people who have been right before, outlets you've verified, removes the algorithm from that decision. You stop being served. You start choosing. The third thing is harder to explain but easier to feel once you know it. There's a specific sensation that comes with the variable reward loop, a restlessness that isn't quite enjoyment and isn't quite boredom, a just one more with no satisfaction at any point, no accumulation, no sense of getting anywhere. That feeling is the schedule working on your behavior. It's distinct from actually finding something interesting. When you can feel the difference, the loop loses most of its grip. Not all of it, but enough. And the last thing, the one with the most leverage, is treating your attention the way you'd treat a bank account you only have one of. Advertisers globally spend $600 billion a year to capture it. $600 billion per year. Not because it's cheap, because it is the most valuable non-renewable asset in the modern economy, and the people who want it are very good at making it feel like it costs nothing to give away. It costs everything. There's a counter-argument worth taking seriously before we close. Some people will say this critique misses something real, that generative AI represents the democratization of creativity, that it gives independent filmmakers, writers, artists capabilities that used to require studio budgets. That's true. That's actually happening in parallel with everything described here. The problem was never the tool. The problem is the economic system the tool was dropped into, a system that rewards noise over signal, volume over depth, stimulus over meaning. That system will take every tool, democratizing or otherwise, and optimize it toward noise. The tool didn't create the incentive structure. The incentive structure captured the tool. This is why some creators have started doing something that looks counterintuitive. Tactile production, hand-rendered animation, visible labor, deliberately imperfect physical objects held up to cameras so the weight of the thing registers. Puppetry, grain, the evidence of cost. They're not being nostalgic. They're sending a signal. This took something. Time, skill, presence. The kind of attention you cannot automate. In a world of infinite synthetic surfaces, proof of cost is proof of reality. Here's where Sarah ends up. After 3 days defending a woman who didn't exist, Sarah did something most people don't. She ran a backward audit, went through the previous 4 weeks of content she remembered finding compelling, and tried to verify the claims. She didn't catch everything. The system is too good for that. But she found enough to see the pattern. She didn't quit the internet. She recalibrated it. She follows fewer accounts now, visits sources directly instead of waiting for the feed to surface them, added about 45 seconds of deliberate friction to opening any social platform. Not through an app. Just a habit. Not because 45 seconds is significant, because 45 seconds is enough to ask, what am I actually here for? She still gets fooled sometimes. Everyone does. But she is not the curriculum anymore. At the start of this, you had a belief. The same one Sarah had, the same one Brandon had, pointed in a different direction. The belief that your judgment is your protection, that your ability to spot what's real is enough to navigate what the internet has become. More than half of web traffic is now automated. Nearly 3/4 of new content is at least partially synthetic. Children are being fed algorithmically generated incoherence in educational wrappers. Bots constitute the majority of the early engagement signal that determines what humans get shown next. Your judgment is necessary. It is not sufficient. This isn't an argument for helplessness. It's an argument for seeing the actual system you're inside, because you cannot navigate a trap you won't look at directly. Your attention is not a passive resource being quietly borrowed. It's an asset being auctioned in real time. to whoever can engineer the highest bid from your neurological reward system. The only question is who decides what it's worth. Sarah knows now. The only question is whether you run the numbers before or after.